Okay, so the next map we're going to make, again, it's going to be a black and white. It's going to be two sets of masks. And what we're going to do is we are going to set up 3 different zones into which we can put 3 different types of rock material. So one, we have cracks, then we have like this stratified rock, and then we have this sort of volcanic rock down here. So by setting up this, what ends up being 2 black and white masks, which can then be blended over each other to create 3 different zones. And you notice here that we have put in 2 pixel processors, and these are going to allow us to change the rotation and position. Actually, I think I ended up just doing the rotation. We'll fool around with it. To get the to get this relationship different, so you can actually adjust where those zones are, and you can create different shapes, and it's kind of cool because you can change it up between different materials that you make. And again, you can choose to expose these or not expose these. What I ended up doing was choosing not to expose them in this final result here because there just ended up being too many things to deal with. But again, that's, you know, depends on the situation. It depends on what you want to do. So without further ado, let's now make this thing, which in combination with the one we made beforehand, this ledge, will give us the broad strokes parameters for the terrain that we're going to make. And again, when I say the word terrain, I don't mean a splat map. I just mean like material that is in the form of a terrain. And then what we're going to do, then we have down here, which we'll get to in a later video, we have these 3 zones that we're going to create here. We're going to populate with 1, 2, 3 different kinds of rock types. And that'll do us for the maps that we're going to actually save to the library, and then we're going to get to actually making this final material with the, you know, with these black and white things that we're making. Towards the end of this video, we will actually take a quick look to see how these 2 maps work with each other. But without further ado, let's commence to making this one. So again, we're going to do File, New Substance. And again, we're going to make this an empty graph, and we're going to call it Rocks 1. And we have our empty graph. Now we know we're going to have 2 different outputs. They're both going to be masks. So now I'm going to actually differentiate the names of my masks. So I'm going to do mask, for lack of a better word, mid. It's not going to correspond to a height. Or you could do mask 1, 2. Just, this is what I put in my notes. You can call it whatever makes it easier for you to remember. And I'm going to call this mask mid 2. And then down here, we're just going to make it a mask. And then just to save myself doing that, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it. And you will notice that while this is allowed to stay the same, this is a unique identifier and therefore must not be the same. But I'm going to call this one high-low, because what we're going to end up doing here is we're going to have, you'll notice, let's go back here, 2 different masks that, well, later on down there get combined to make our 3 zones. We're going to test them in this video just to make sure they work, but we're not going to actually export that test. So let's get back to here. All right. So we're going to start with a couple of noises. And I used clouds 2. And then this, I forget which grunge it is, but it is very distinctive, this grunge right here. So again, just like with the previous one, we're trying to create land masses here. These are going to be a bit smaller. I mean, like, I want more differential between them. I want sort of a more even split between black and white. Smaller is probably not the right word to use there. So again, we're going to bring in the levels. We're going to start with this top one. And I want to get this to be black and white, essentially. So again, we're going to... it's going the wrong direction. What am I doing here? Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we'll leave that there for now. This guy, I think what we want to do is we want to get him a bit smaller. So let's go up to my favorites and grab a noise upscale. Now, there's no need for, I don't want to make this any bigger than 256 by 256. So I want that pattern smaller, but I don't want it to upscale the resolution. So I'm going to bring that down one, and that's going to bring it back down to 256 by 256. And now let's do kind of the same thing here that we did to the one on top, which is get it to look more black and white. And again, you know, this is kind of a touchy-feely thing. This more cloudy one. This one up here didn't really need that business we did with the multiplying it by itself, but this one will. But before I do that, let's tighten this up a bit. I think I'm going to give it another blur, just to soften that harsh stuff out, and then I'm going to bring that way down. Maybe soften that out. Maybe now that I see, I want to look at the, so I'm double clicking on this to get the image, and then I'm single clicking on that one, and I'm going to adjust these levels, but I'm looking at the blurred image while I do it. That's probably better. Let's move these guys a little bit further this way. And so we got this blur. Let's give it another shot now that we've softened. See, this is a little bit, it's when I was testing it out, it seemed to have made a difference. I can't really, even now I can't visually tell, but it seemed to do a slightly better job, and it's not that expensive to do. So again, you kind of fool around with this stuff. Yeah. Okay. So that's a much sharper image now, without losing too much of the white in the middle. And now let's do that little thing with the blendy multiplication. And then we'll copy that and paste it and repeat the process. So now we end up with two different black and white maps. Maybe a little bit too much. See, in this one, this artifacting, It's something I want to try to avoid because we're going to be, we want to sort of lay down as even a coat of whatever material we're going to be putting in there as we can. It's a bit better. So you know, I want to, I mean, we'll see. That's kind of really small. I don't think it'll make a difference. So we now have these two different black and white maps that we're just going, excuse me, that we're just going to run each one of them through its own pixel processor that is going to allow it to rotate around. Okay, so pull out a pixel processor and let's take a look. We'll get rid of this guy. Again, we're just going to set up a simple sort of position. We're going to turn this into a $ position. We're going to pull out a sampler. I'm going to set this as our output node. We are going to get, we're going to get a variable. We're going to need one of each. Float 2, so that's going to go up here. And we're going to need an addition. And then last but not least, oh, actually I have this in my favorite. I'm going to pull this out here. Okay, so we've set ourselves up where we now have a pixel processor function where we're going to have two variables, which we're going to make right now, which will allow us to change the starting position and the rotation angle of each one of these maps. This will be more information than we'll want to put out in our final material. But since we're making this for reuse, you know, I don't mind doing a little bit more than necessary with these guys because it means that you can use it in a bunch of different ways, and you're really not obliged to use them all when you make a material. They're just there. So let's make those variables first. So I'm double clicking on the graph and I'm going to make this smaller and I'm going to create an input parameter. Now we're going to do one of two things. I called it mid and high-low, so I'm going to stick with that. Honestly, I don't think that's the best names for them, but I got tired of naming stuff. Mid, so I'm going to call this mid rotation. Oh, I should put rotate in here because we're going to do forget how I did the grips. Let's leave those for now. Mid rotation. Actually, no. What? Oh, this is all rock 1, I think. Yeah. For now, let's just leave these all at 0. Yeah. And then we'll do one for position. No, I thought I typed it. Okay. Position. And the group is rock 1. Okay. For now, we'll just bring these down to 0. And let me just take a look at how I named these in my notes. this high-low for now. So the other ones we're going to kind of do the same idea, except we're going to call it high-low position. I think I called them these because when I was originally messing around with it, I was using them for heights, and I decided not to go like that, which is why I think I called them that, because at this point those names make no sense at all. And we'll do the same thing for rotation. So I try to keep them the same, and if I'm talking, it's kind of hard to remember what I was naming my files. So high-low rotation. You can always change the names of these of the variables later on, the labels, whatever. It'll automatically update everything. Okay. All right, I'm just going to bring these down to nothing, nothing. I think that's done. So let's just double check, make sure I did. Yeah, that's all the same thing. So I'm just going to copy this now and paste it down here, since we're going to be kind of doing the same thing to each one of them, just with different variables. So the one on top I called mid. Wait a minute. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to change those to float 2s. So both of these positions need to be float 2. And now it will work. So we want the mid position, and down here we want mid rotation. And then down here, oh, that's weird. Sure, I've got that one, right? Oh, there we go. I was like, that's very, very strange. And so where are we now? We're high-low. So this is high-low position, and this is going to be a high-low rotation. Okay. Yeah, you know, because you double-click on them, and it, I don't know, sometimes, so this is high-low, and let's make sure we double-clicked on this. Now this should be mid. Yeah, okay. All right, so we're going to hook these up. And then we're going to change the output of both of these to grayscale. And then before, so this is our basic rough masks now. Right. And then what we also, before we set it out to the output, we want, I think, to put in, look at my notes. Yeah, I have another smooth in here for each one of these. And what, again, it's going to kind of do the same thing, another blur rather. It's going to, I'm just copying, pasting a new one. It's going to give us the ability to smooth the edges between rock types. So just like we were doing here with having this either a very sort of sharp cliff-like edge, or let's take a look what happens when we smooth this out a little bit. So I'm going to ledge slope right now, and as I move that ledge slope, yeah, there we go. It it gets much more, yeah, it's a shallower edge. So let's move that back. All right. So we're going to kind of we're going to give ourselves the ability to do that in between here as well. So we can kind of, I think I have these exposed. Yeah, so I have these exposed right now, and so you can kind of, you know, let's not have this play. It's just easier to do. You can actually move these around so we can have these very sharp edges. Whereas before we had very smooth, you know, a much smoother gradation between the two of them. Now we have these very sharp edges between them. So this is something that is a function of this map that we're making now, and that difference between those two, you know, the different rock types is what we're building here. So again, it's just a blur. It's very straightforward, and you're just allowing it to, you know, gray in and out of those things. So let me take a quick look at my notes as to what I had for those. Just I'm going to put in the defaults that I had earlier. So I have edge smoothness. Let's make the variables. What did we do those? Ah, come on. No, we didn't. So let's make the variables. We have edge smoothness. Again, for mid and for high-low. I'm going to add rock 1 in here. Just copy that. So edge smooth mid, rock 1. And I had that set as, now again, remember we're talking about smoothness, so I had it set at 2.33, and then I had the maximum set at 20, so it gives people an opportunity to get it, you know, really, really sort of gentle. And then we're going to do another one of these for edge smoothness. I'm just going to paste this in high-low. And the group is rock 1. And this I had set at 1.65. And the maximum again I had set at 20. So this is our, which one are we? This is mid on top. So we will set this one intensity to edge smooth mid. And this one we will set to edge smooth high-low. And that's this one done. So this will be our mask mid. That is correct. And this is our mask high-low, and we forgot to change our label. Low. Okay. Yeah, you don't need to have an underscore here. You can have a space. Right. So yeah, you know what? I'll start the next video with combining this together with the other mask, because it's going to start to make sense, because it leads into making the actual materials that are going to are going to go into these zones that we're going to create by the interplay of these two masks. So let's just save this one. So we've got rocks 1. I'm going to save. And again, we're going to save it in demos ground. I'm going to call it rocks 1. And just so, because sometimes you want one of these, and this way you don't have to think about it later, I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. And remember, we can always, in the library, in the filter, when we're looking for stuff, if you don't want to have too many things, you can always sort of add just, you only want to see graphs. So all of a sudden you're only going to see graphs. You're not going to see any substance archive files. Okay, so it's saved at rocks 1 is there. We know it's there. We have both. We have the compiled, we have the regular, and we have the substance archive. So that's it for now, and we will start combining these things in the next video.